Although sex and sexuality are ripe with pleasure, there's also obviously a very dark side to sex, with sexual violence, assault, and exploitation. This show, I interviewed Jess Johnson, the founder of Genes for Justice, about how to bring a new, empowering, and holistic approach to this work. And I offer a den recommend of a book that has inspired many to help women and girls around the globe. All right, I'm really pleased to have Jess Johnson here today. Yay! The founder of Genes for Justice, a nonprofit in San Diego that's about increasing awareness and education around sexual assault. But they have a very unique approach to this through sharing stories, cultivating leaders, empowering communities, ending sexual violence, all in order to create healthy relationships and empower social change. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I know that's kind of a new tagline that you've been working with. How did you end up with that?
Yeah, we started realizing that our approach really focuses more on what we do want rather than what we don't want.
Nice.
So, we had been saying initially when we started, we were talking about preventing sexual violence. Then we started talking about ending sexual violence. We're like, let's just go for it. And then we started really realizing that all of our approaches were really about what do we want to creating healthy relationships with self, with others, with your family, with your partner, with your community, and so we started to shift the tagline.
And why do you think that's an important shift?
Well, I think that there's so much emphasis out there right now. There's so many things going on in the world that are focusing, where the education around it is focusing on either risk reduction or what we don't want to do, and especially when working with young people, but really when working with anyone around empowerment, it's such a different conversation when we start talking about the possibilities, what's really possible from within and in relationship, rather than continuing to grind in all of the terrible things that are happening.
Nice. So, and I know you take a very, a more indirect approach than other folks out there maybe doing sexual assault. We'll specifically talk about the sex, the interactions, the fear, the danger, presenting yourself, drinking, all of those aspects. And I know that's all relevant, but your way of doing this empowerment is sort of a indirect ways. Could you speak more to that of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. We've realized that we've really wanted to focus on personal transformation. And so what we've seen is that there are some great programs out there that are doing work around, directly hitting this is what sexual violence is, defining it, talking about what it looks like, talking about what causes it. But then there's also a lot of conversation around what's the root cause of sexual violence. And what we've discovered through our work is that really what's at the root is something that can be shifted at a deep personal level. Yes. So as we're doing work around what we believe is going to end sexual violence, around personal transformation, making changes in our lives, getting more in line with our values, our truth, our passion, our ability to communicate healthily, then we really believe that that's going to be what is the root solution at ending sexual violence.
So if there was one thing you could change in how our society approaches these topics, what would it be?
There's a lot.
I know.
That's so hard to answer, but I would say there's so much work that's focusing on the headspace in this field. So we're approaching these issues at a very intellectual level, but I don't believe that is really where the problem is living. I don't believe that the problem is living in an intellectual zone. So when we can start to take it deeper into our bodies, into our hearts, starting to look at how our journeys through life have affected who we are, how we make our choices, then I believe that that's one thing that I would change around what a lot of the current programs are doing, is really making it more experiential, making it more embodied, and I think that's where deep transformation can really happen.
Nice. So speaking of experiential, what's your motivation here? What's your story? Why do you do this?
Gosh, I feel like every time I tell my story, it comes out different. It's really interesting. I don't have that canned, this is my story. For me, initially, I was 25 or so, and I was volunteering for a rape crisis center here in San Diego. And I learned about this rape case that happened and this grassroots campaign, Jeans for Justice, where people would wear jeans to raise awareness for ending sexual violence, that came from this rape case. And the rape case, for those of our listeners out there that don't know, there was a woman who's wearing jeans and she was raped, and the jury decided it's common knowledge that it's too difficult to remove jeans without the consent of the person wearing them. So it really just indicated just where our society's at in terms of the victim blaming and just in terms of what it really causes this and what's deserved and all these different things and the social stigma. But interestingly enough, so I started coming up with all these creative ways that we could raise awareness and use jeans and fashion and art and make it more approachable and accessible.
Yeah.
But the thing was for me that really brought it home was that I actually have seen this affect my own family. I've seen this affect my friends when I was in high school, when I was in college, and then when I started doing this work, not only did all of that come back around to make it really real, but also everywhere I went, people were sharing their stories with me. I couldn't even believe it. And that's at that point, that's when I started researching the statistics and seeing which group was most heavily hit, looking at young people, both young men and young women, and looking at the fact that it's not so much what people think of sexual violence as this stranger jumping out of a bush.
Right.
It's so much bigger than that and so much broader than that.
So weaved into our sexuality. Yeah.
It really is. Like sexual violence, the way that we look at it, can really even be any situation where you feel like your choice was taken away in any way. So sometimes it's not very clear what even happened. So a lot of people don't necessarily identify that being sexual violence or relationship violence, but it's really about how did this make you feel. So anyways, so just to get back to your question, that's kind of, I know I get on a tangent sometimes.
There's a lot.
But that, so that started making it really real for me. And every story that I heard, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I really get deep into this? And I really felt like I had the passion and the energy to do it. And it really, strikes a chord for me, not just because of what I've experienced in my family or my friendships, but really just the breadth and the width of how prevalent this is and how many people have somehow been affected. It just really hits home.
Yeah. So please stay tuned, because very shortly we will come back and the audience is going to do a Q&A with Jess. Sometimes I do that's bullshit segments about what pisses me off. But today this is about that's inspiring. A recommendation of a book that's inspired me and many others. Half the Sky by award-winning journalists Nicholas Kristof and Sheryl WuDunn. The subtitle for this book is Turning Oppression into Opportunity for Women Worldwide. And specifically, they take the reader around Africa and Asia. Now, the book isn't new, as it came out in 2009, but I just got to read it myself, and I read it cover to cover. The authors lead us through trends, statistics, and personal stories about the sex trafficking of girls, high maternal mortality rates, fistulas, female genital cutting, global poverty. Now, this all may sound very heavy, and it is, but the authors are fantastic writers and tell story after inspiring story. And then they give examples of the impact of educational efforts to empower women. If you want to know how young girls in Cambodia are forced into prostitution, or why women die or are disfigured in childbirth in Cameroon, and what you can do about that, read this book. I have a good friend who was so inspired by this book that she joined forces with several friends in the U.S. They fundraised and just opened a school in rural Cambodia for hundreds of students to assist the community in poverty and protect girls from forced prostitution. And we can all be part of this humanitarian issue.
I just wanted to know what upcoming events, fundraisers, or interesting things that Jeans for Justice has going on.
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the things I'm really most excited about, it's been Sexual Assault Awareness Month for all of April, so we have been really, really busy doing a lot of community outreach and programming. But one of the things I'm most excited about that we have that's brand new is it's called our Live It program. And it is basically our program for adults, for anybody post-college and even in college, where they can take different challenges. Our tagline for that is, we all have a story, the difference is how you live it. So basically we have 5 different challenges: skydiving, rock climbing, dance, yoga, and spoken word. And so, yeah, I know we're just lazy. But so we have brought together teams and communities of people where they're building community, which is a huge part of our approach, is on building safe spaces, communities where people can be authentic, but also communities where people can share their stories and be passionate about this work. So that's been going on for the month of April. People are fundraising, and then there's going to be in May and June a whole series of events and projects that have to do with all those 5 different themes that are going to be going on. So we've got a bunch of stuff going on in that area. And then one of the things I'm really excited about that's happening is next year we're working on our national launch, which is going to be a fashion show in LA where we recruit celebrities and just people who are in the public eye to share their stories and have them reconstructed and created on and told and painted on jeans, and having those done by famous and professional artists and fashion designers. So that's going to be more long term, but right now, like, that's one of the things I'm really excited about is that Live It campaign, because it really is accessible for anybody. And then we also have a half marathon training program that we do the same type of thing. We empower the community with tools on how to sort of be a container to really nurture the students that are coming through the programs that want to be social change agents, to come into the world and be able to interact with adults who can be mentors and who can really hold that container for them to continue the work and continue the conversation in powerful ways. So, yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, thanks for asking that.
So talk about, you said prevalent. It's very prevalent when you got into the work. That's my first part of the question. How prevalent do you see it is? The second thing is, what happens after somebody does the work with Jeans for Justice? These kids or these young people or even adults now, what are the typical things that happen in their life?
Well, so in terms of prevalence, if you start to look up statistics, if you go home today and you start looking up, how many women are sexually assaulted, how many men are sexually assaulted, you'll literally find this vast range. Every study pretty much produces something different. The stuff that I've been finding and landing on indicates that 1 in 6 men are sexually abused by the time they're 18. And that's a number that I think floors a lot of people, because most people don't realize that it's that prevalent in men. And then for women, it ranges from 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 will be either somehow sexually assaulted, sexually abused, physically abused. So it's kind of between 1 in 3 and 1 in 5 for women. So that's a pretty intense number. Even just looking at this audience right here, it's like, wow, that it's pretty heavy. What I've been finding that students and people that go through this work, what happens after, we tend to do more in-depth, long-term programming with them. So we're with these people for a long time. We sometimes go in and do, one-day workshops and things like that, but we really, the majority of our effort goes into long-term, gradual, gentle, embodied transformation. So what usually happens is that, people want to stay involved with the organization. They want to do something about it. We name our programs Be It, Lead It, Live It. And so it's really about embodying the change that you want to see. So we see them taking action, taking leadership roles in their communities, wanting to start clubs so that they can sustain the work that we're doing. And what I love about it is a lot of the students, they know their culture better than we do. So we don't assume that we know their particular school better than they do. So we give them the tools that they can take, and then we give them ideas for projects where they can use their creativity to express and raise more awareness and create more leaders on campus. But we let them have a little bit of flexibility with how they go about doing that based on their own campus's culture. And that's kind of what's going on at both a high school and a college level right now.
So how are men exactly involved in your organization?
We have men involved in every single aspect of the organization, from from our board of directors to our volunteer base. I mean, literally, I would say it's not quite half men, but almost half men. That's awesome. So the way our approach is very open, whereas some programs really look at this as a women's issue, this is such an everybody issue. And so not only do we acknowledge how many men have been personally affected, but also all the men that are somehow either well, all of us are somehow contributing to the problem in different ways. So we really make it open and safe and available so that men can get involved, whether they want to use their talent, their creativity, their skills, and help volunteer at that level and utilize it that way. Even when that happens, what we've been finding is that a lot of the men that come on board to volunteer with us somehow find that they have their own personal story that they weren't even necessarily aware of when they came into it. So the nature of our work really, it opens up the conversation. It creates an access point, and from there it makes people feel safe so they can start to really go back through their lives and really discover how this has lived somehow inside of their own life, inside of their own experience. So I find that men, we've had no problem engaging men. Even students at a student level, we tend to have more of a draw from young women, but the young men that have been getting involved with us have been getting, I would say, equal amount out of all the programming. So it's been really, really cool to see, and they get really passionate about wanting to see more boys, men get involved. So that's awesome.
So important.
So important.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That's awesome. Well, Jess, I'd like to thank you and give you your In the Den with Dr. Jenn
Yay,
mug.
thank you.
And if you'd like to learn more about Jess Johnson and her work, you can find her online at jeansforjustice.org. I hope you're feeling inspired, whether home or abroad, to make a difference in the lives of girls and women. You can help yourself, respect gender equality, and unleash the capabilities of women. I'd also like to thank Jess Johnson and Jeans for Justice. You can find them online at jeansforjustice.org. And you can get in touch with me if you'd like to have me speak to your school, organization, or interested in a coaching or counseling session in person or via Skype. You can find me at drjensden.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Dr. Jen's Den. Now, trust me, you don't want to miss the little hidden gem we have at the end of the credits. And as always, be kind to yourself. Thank you. I'll find it, I promise. If not.
They only cost $300 to replace. It's no big deal.
They probably would. How much do they really cost?
That's where they make all their money.
We took-
In the fuzzy
Because they know you'll lose it.
Dr. Jen's so hard on microphones, we took out microphone insurance.
Shut up. Yeah, hold on. I think I have to burp. Excuse me.